Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today while we're going to be discussing Google Shopping. I'm Tim McDonald. I'm a sales team lead here at Deliver, and I'm also going to be introducing Link Walls. He is a VP of Digital Marketing Strategy for Channel Advisor. And we are lucky enough to have Link here with us to share some of his insights about Google Shopping. He's an expert in the field, and so he's going to be going through some of the biggest trends and opportunities that might exist for your e-commerce business. But before we do that, I did just want to take a quick step back and kind of take a focus on what we're going to be discussing today. You know, the big question is, where do consumers typically buy products online? And for the most part, the answer to that question is Amazon, then Walmart, eBay, Shopify, and other types of stores. But the truth is that a majority of online consumers are actually beginning their search for a product on Google, not in one of these marketplaces. And so that presents a big opportunity for e-commerce merchants. And so what exactly is this opportunity with Google Shopping? I like to think that you're going to be able to help your consumers in a few different ways. First, you'll be able to help your consumers know where to buy your product. Second, you'll help your consumers check out faster and get that product in a more seamless fashion. And third, you'll also help your customers always find you by being very prominent and on the biggest search engine. So what does this actually look like? I think we've all probably seen the Google product listing ads before. They're that, little boxes that are at the very top of search. It's also the Google Shopping tab, which is conveniently located right next to images and all those other tabs right after you search for a product. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our expert on Google Shopping, Link Walls.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Tim, and good morning or good afternoon, depending where in the world you are today. So Tim, I think, did a nice job of setting the stage in terms of Google Shopping and sort of some of the things that it can enable for your customers. So I'm happy to be here as part of Deliver Conference to give you a little bit more detail on some of the strategies that we take at Channel Advisor and sort of the latest of what we're seeing in terms of Google Shopping. So let's go ahead and dive in. So just a real quick about Channel Advisor, just so you know who I am and who you're hearing from here. So Channel Advisor, we created Channel Advisor really because we saw the need for brands and retailers to connect into a number of different channels. And what we saw was that brands and retailers really struggled to connect to all these different channels. And so we've been around close to 20 years now and really saw this, the market emerging and getting increasingly complicated, where brands and retailers had to connect into a lot of different channels. So whether that's advertising on Google, like we're talking about today, or Amazon or Facebook, selling directly on a marketplace like, again, Amazon or Walmart or many others, or even reaching consumers in different ways, right, through first-party connections, fulfillment options as well. So what we do at Channel Advisor is we have a platform that helps connect all of this in one place and connect into all these varying channels. Just a little bit about us at a glance. We plug into more than 140 marketplaces around the world, close to 3,000 clients around the world. So we see a lot of data and a lot of exposure to some of the leaders in online retail. And we've been privileged to be named the #1 channel management vendor since 2013 and the #2 leading search engine marketing vendor. And of course, we have very close relationships with all of these channels, right? So whether that's Google or Amazon or eBay or Facebook. And that really allows us to understand where these companies are going, what their roadmaps look like, so that we can build that into our solution to ultimately drive success for our customers. Okay, so let's talk about Google Shopping. And we wanted to start off just to get a sense of where everybody's at with a quick poll. So Tim, you want to introduce this for everybody?
Yeah, so everyone, if you could, make sure to go on to the right where there are polls. This is essentially how you show your participation. So make sure to put an answer into that poll. I think we'll give you guys just a minute or two here to work on that.
Do they get that trophy that's on the screen, Tim? Is that the prize?
Actually, yes, it will be sent to your home in 2 days or less.
That's pretty awesome. 2 days or less.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, so if you see the poll there, and if you don't see it in the little panel, the poll is really who's Google Shopping for? Is it for, brands and retailers should use Google Shopping to sell more on their website, sell more in their physical store, or sell more on Google, or all of the above? Tim, should I let that go another minute, or you want to just go ahead and keep rolling?
I think we're probably good. If you haven't entered the poll, again, make sure to do that, because that is, how we can understand that you're here, and we'll be able to award you the prizes. So make sure to fill out that poll.
Cool. Well, so the answer really here is all of the above, right? And so let me talk to you about sort of all the various aspects of what Google Shopping is. Tim touched on it in the beginning with product listing ads, but one of the things that's really happened over the last several years is that Google's increasingly expanded the reach of what exactly Google Shopping means. So let me walk you through sort of what that looks like in 2020. So of course there are the ads, so going left from right here, just as Tim alluded to, right, on google.com, right, you've all seen these. You do a search, you see, ads at the top. There's also, of course, the Google Shopping tab, right? So you see the, again, really a shopping focused set of results. Also part of image search, right? So Google Shopping is added to image search, probably going back about 18 months now. There's the Google Shopping app and the homepage, right? So if you go to shopping.google.com, which is really a shopping-centered, experience that they're building out. And then last but not least is shopping ads on YouTube, right? So, for related videos, right, you see suggested products here. And they've increasingly, experimented with getting product ads on YouTube. So the reach of Google Shopping is really broad, right? And I think what we see is that we see product ads really everywhere across this landscape. And there's kind of two primary means here that when you think about Google Shopping, right? So the first is, you see an ad here for this rice cooker, right? Maybe this ad is from Target, right? I can see some details about it on shopping.google.com, right? But then ultimately, I'm visiting the site. You see the blue button here in the middle. I'm clicking off to, in this case, Target, where I can make the purchase on Target's website. And that's sort of the first, and I'd say certainly the primary use case around Google Shopping. But one of the things that Google's rolled out, and there was news on this just last week, is Buy on Google, right? And this is all enabled through a program that Google calls Google Shopping Actions. And so if you see that same rice cooker, and apologies for my dog at the poor timing for an Amazon delivery. Sorry, Google. So Google Shopping Actions is this program that then allows the consumer to buy on Google, right? So in this case, I see the same product, and I can add it to cart and check out directly on Google. Right now, in this case, it's still shipped from and sold by Target, but the transaction actually happens on Google, right? So it really is Google operating, effectively as a marketplace in this example. And then finally is local, right? And that's certainly, they've done a lot of innovations here just in the last several months, right? Since COVID. But really when Google recognizes that, maybe you're on mobile or, just really wants to show results that are near you, right? I think it's a recognition from Google that still the majority of commerce happens in stores, at least for now. And so as a result, they're going to show you indications that indicate you can pick it up today, or how many miles away it is from you, where it is on a map. And you'll see, these the notation of curbside pickup is something that recently Google's added, again, to try to give that consumer more information about where the product is, how they can go and purchase it if they want to buy it local. So ultimately here, Google's vision for Google Shopping is really that regardless of whether you want to buy it directly from a website like a Target or somebody else, or you want to buy it directly on Google, right? Or if you want to go find out where can you find this product in store, they want to make sure that you can do any of those things. And so really trying to facilitate experiences that solve for all of those different use cases, which are admittedly pretty broad in nature. So how do you be successful here, right? That can be a complicated landscape. And I think depending on, who you are, the nature of your business, there's certain aspects of here that you want to focus on more than others. So let's talk through sort of how we see at Channel Advisor, and we help brands and retailers of a lot of different sizes solve for Google Shopping really every single day. And so what I'll walk you through here is sort of our perspective on how do you be successful in this channel, because ultimately you're advertising, you're spending money, right? You need to make sure you're successful at it. And then what are some of the key strategies that we put in place for some of our clients? So my goal for this session is to really give you some tangible things that if you're managing Google Shopping today, you can take back, or if you're working with an agency, you can take back to them as some new ideas that you can explore. Okay, so the first thing to keep in mind, and I think one of the most common misperceptions that we see when it comes to Google Shopping from advertisers is not understanding that this is different than a text ad program, right? So I think most people, if you've been in e-commerce, very long at all, you're familiar with keyword-driven search, right? Where, let's just say I'm selling this wagon, right? I'm going to go out and bid on search terms that are related to it, right? So kids toy wagon, red toy wagon, radio flyer wagon, etc. Right? I think most people are pretty familiar with that as just a concept. And of course, I'm greatly oversimplifying, what is the field of text ads, but essentially that's a concept I think most people get, right? I'm gonna pay for a keyword. It's hopefully relevant to what I'm selling. I'm gonna get a click. I'm gonna get a sale, and life is good. Well, with shopping ads, they fundamentally work different. So a lot of times people will say, well, I've got this product. Well, which keyword should I go bid on for this product? And in shopping, you really aren't doing that. So shopping's kind of turned things on its head. So what you're doing is you're getting your product data to Google. Okay, so you're sending them your catalog. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you do that and what that consists of. But essentially what you're doing is you're giving Google the information. So you're telling them you have this picture of this wagon and the title and the price and all of the various product attributes. And then what Google does is match this to relevant queries. Okay, and again, kind of oversimplifying here, but what Google would do is say, all right, these are relevant queries for this product. How do I go find a match? So when you do a search on google.com and you see, product results come back, that's because Google's looked at all the inventory that's out there, all the products that are out there, and said, all right, these are the most relevant ones combined with sort of what you're willing to pay for that search, right? So that's kind of the first point to understand is that, again, you're not bidding directly on keywords, but what you are doing is want to make your content as relevant as possible so that you're matching to the right keywords, because that's a big part of what will drive success. Okay, so within that, going a level deeper, there's really 4 kind of main elements that we think about at Channel Advisor in terms of unlocking Google Shopping success. And the program of Google Shopping has changed over time, right? I've been in the business long enough to remember back when it was all free and something called Frugal, and it continues to iterate, right? There continues to be new innovations and new changes. But these 4 things have been fairly constant in nature. And so when we think about a successful Google Shopping program that we would manage, we're really looking at these 4 elements and trying to make sure that we have these set up for success. So the first is certainly content, right? Making sure that your content is good, that it's accurate, it's descriptive. You can sort of think of your product content like you would think of your web page for SEO purposes, right? If you have let's say you're on your website, if you don't have good titles and good descriptions, well, it's kind of hard to expect Google to figure out how to rank you in SEO. And the same is really true with products and content, right? If I describe that toy wagon as wagon, and I don't put any color attributes or the fact that it's a toy or anything else, I can't really expect Google to do a good job of matching me to the right queries. So getting your content in great shape is really, it's a never-ending process, and there's a lot of testing that goes into that in terms of testing different titles and different descriptions and seeing which ones work better, and that changes over time. The second element's the query itself, right? So again, there's a lot we can do. I mentioned that Google does a really good job of matching products to relevant queries, and they do a pretty amazing job of that. It's a really hard problem to do. But there's a lot of things we can do to optimize that and really get the most out of that, right? And so there's a lot we do with looking at specific search terms, account structure we can do, campaign structure that we can do, And that's could be a whole separate webinar in and of itself. But to suffice it to say, there's a lot you can do there to make optimized performance. Certainly then the bottom two, the audience, right? So Google has done a lot in the last several years around audiences in terms of understanding who is the person on the other end of that search. Is it somebody who's bought from you before? Is it somebody who's been on your website recently? And so audiences are an important part of any digital marketing campaign in 2020. And then finally is just the bidding itself, right? And so whether or not we're using automation, and we'll talk through some automation techniques here in a little bit, but really just making sure at the end of the day that the amount we're bidding is appropriate for the results we're going to get, right? So, at the end of the day, bidding should be really predictive in nature, right? We want to pay an amount that allows us to balance the cost we're paying with the revenue we're going to get. And when we get all these things in alignment, that's when we really can hit goals and really drive a lot of success from Google Shopping. Okay, so in terms of how we think about Google Shopping strategy, there's a lot of different tools that Google gives you access to in terms of, because at the end of the day, Google wants to make it really easy for you to put your catalog in Google, hit a button, give it a goal, and be able to sort of go, right? And there's a lot of value to that simplicity. However, there's a lot of things that you can do that I think really can take it to the next level. So one of the big things that we think about is thinking about your product catalog not as one, cohesive thing, but really rather as a collection of products, and a lot of which have very different attributes, right? So, a lot of you who are here probably sell a lot of different products, a lot of different types of products, right? So for example, thinking about, products that you sell that are maybe very expensive, maybe they're $300 versus ones that are inexpensive, right? A pair of socks that's $12. Thinking about products you have a lot of quantity of versus some that you have very little quantity. Products where maybe you have a lot of margin, right? It's a very profitable product for you versus ones where you just don't have very much margin at all, right? Especially important when you get into categories like electronics where the margins are super, super thin. It's important to differentiate on margin often. That's a good common strategy. Also looking at the difference between brand new products and then products that are on clearance. And finally, products that have very strong brand names versus products that are just more generic in nature. And so really when we think about strategy for Google Shopping, it really is to think about, and it's a balance between getting overly granular versus just overly broad. And over time, you sort of have to find what is that right mix. But what we often do, and you'll see in a number of the strategies I'll walk you through, is break up the catalog across some of these different attributes, right? And depending on the nature of your business, it might make sense to focus on margin. For another retailer, it might make sense to isolate brand name products versus generic products. So you really have to look at what the differences are in the catalog, and what drives performance most importantly, right? If everything performs the same, there's no need to go through any of this complexity. So like I said, strategy really starts with what you sell, thinking about your catalog, and how do we segment and slice and dice that catalog in ways that allow us to optimize without getting overly granular, right? And so without getting too into the details, sometimes we see retailers that say, all right, well, I'm going to create, a separate product group for every single one of my products. And you can actually kind of overdo it because what happens is you just get too specific and you don't give any system, whether it's Google or your own or something else, enough data to really work with in terms of making good decisions around automation and bidding. So think about what you sell. Think of your catalog as a collection of products with a lot of different attributes. All right, so let me walk you through the top 5 strategies that can kind of build on that concept. And again, these are all ones that we leverage today as part of our work with our clients. So the first one is turning what is called smart shopping into what we call smart margin-based shopping. So if you're not familiar with smart shopping is something that Google rolled out probably 2 years ago, I guess, and really in earnest in the last, say, 18 months. And smart shopping is what it allows you to do. It allows you to show your products across several different places. And this is the places they show, right? So they show on search, just like I talked about earlier. They show on display. They also are eligible to show on YouTube, and they also show in Gmail, right? And so what smart shopping does is basically you give Google, a set of products, and they figure out where to go serve those products. Okay. And now in smart shopping, the way it works is, you give it a goal. So let's say a goal of, let's say your goal is 500% return, right? And said another way, that'd be a return on ad spend of 5, meaning for every dollar I spend on advertising, I want to get 5 back in sales. Well, so if you do that, then the automation will run, and Google will figure out, all right, where should I serve these ads? Which ones should I show to? What people? What time of day? All these other factors. And so let's say you're doing that, and Google's hitting your goal, and your return is 520%, right? So that's great. And let's say your impression share is 28%, which impression share, if you're not familiar with it, means just what percentage of the time does one of your ads show when it's eligible, right? So 28% of the time is relatively low, meaning that 72% of the time your ad didn't show for any number of reasons. Well, so what we can do is we can take this and sort of take the concept I mentioned earlier around product margin and say, all right, if that's what we get as a whole, what if we break things up? And so what if we take the product catalog and separate it into high margin, medium, and low margin products, right? And now you need to know which products are high or medium and low, and you could set thresholds. You could get as simple or as complicated as you wanted to here. But maybe for our high margin products, right, we know that we can actually spend a little bit more on advertising, right? Because we can afford to get down to a 3-to-1 on those. Whereas on our low margin products, really a 5-to-1, we're upside down and we're losing money, right? So we want to set the goal higher for that. So the strategy here is to split up the catalog into really essentially 3 catalogs, right? High, medium, and low margin products. And when we do that, then what we can see is the fact that, all right, we can raise our impression share on our high margin products, right? Probably at a lower return, but limit our impression share on some of those low margin products. So again, we're helping inform the algorithm and the automation at Google with another signal, which is our product margin. Because again, given the trade-off, right, if we don't tell Google which ones are high versus medium versus low, they don't know that. And so they're just as likely to serve up a low margin product for a click as a high. And that's not what we want, right? I mean, if all things are equal, we'd rather products that generate more margin are the ones that served, right? So taking smart shopping and sort of taking it to the next level with product margin is that first strategy. So the second one is, I mentioned that one of the elements being the query is really leveraging your search query data to improve shopping. And so in Google, there's something called the search query report that you can get, and really that's a gold mine of information because it shows you all the things that you're matching to, right? All of the queries that you're matching to. So let's say in this example for a snowboard helmet, right? These are examples of all the queries that I'm going to be mapping to. Well, one of the things that we can do is we can then look at that data and figure out from the query data which ones are performing differently. And so this is something we call query-driven shopping, which is really designed to, if you think of a funnel, right, you have very broad search terms, which we know tend to not perform as well because it's not clear what the person's searching for, right? Snowboard helmet, as opposed to very specific terms like this, gyro ledge, matte red, size small, right? Which is a very specific term. And we know that just from the data that the more specific the query, generally speaking, the better the return. And so what this approach allows us to do is essentially we can split this funnel into 2. And so for the same product, if it's mapping to a very broad query, we might conclude that, we only want to pay 45 cents for that click, right? Because it's a pretty broad query, doesn't return that well, versus something that's pretty specific, we may be okay paying $1.25, right? And so by segmenting these queries out and bidding accordingly, we're better able to match what is the expected return we're going to get here to the cost. Because if we don't do something like this, again, Google is going to say, all right, for this product, it's a reasonable result for any of these queries here. But we know that they're going to perform differently, and we want to account for that when we think about bidding or automation. So that's the second one, is query-driven shopping and really leveraging that query data as part of your campaign. The third one is around promoting full price items. And this is really using price as a lever. It could be full price items. You could do this in reverse with clearance as an example. But the strategy here is to use item price as a signal to promote your full price items for a specific category. So if you look at the screenshot here, right, this is a search for Tommy Armour driver. And the results from Google, there's nothing wrong with these results. These are good search results, right? I mean, they're all Tommy Armour driver result. Well, the fifth one's a TaylorMade, different brand. And so, the two of these are both from Dick's Sporting Goods, right? But if you'll notice, the first one is $99, right? So much lower price point item. And then the third one, I think is probably a newer item, is $299. Well, depending on our goals and depending on, the goals of the advertiser, right, we may want to promote this newer product because it's new. Maybe we have a lot of inventory of it. And that's really what we want to show. Well, so the way we can do that is we take our product catalog, and for this subset of products, we can segment those out into different categories. So for instance, within our product catalog, we take golf clubs, and then further we take drivers, and then we can put them into two groups, right? So full price products and discount products. And this can, a system like this can be dynamic in nature. So as products change in price, we can move them from one bucket to the other if we wanted to. And so the strategy here is to take these, segment them out, and then bid them differently. So if we really want the full price new line of products, you think about like categories like electronics, apparel as well. Certainly golf clubs, sporting goods that have a really strong seasonal nature, right? New season stuff comes out. You want to focus on that. You want to bid more on that. You kind of think of the parallels almost like in a physical store, right? The physical retailer doesn't put, when the new products come in, you tend to put those front and center. You want to get them in front of consumers. So basically this idea is doing the exact same thing, right? And saying, all right, we can set different return goals or different bids to control the traffic volume so that when somebody searches for Tommy Armour driver, we want to show this full price item. And again, you could do the same thing in reverse. If you really wanted to clear out the discount stuff, you could do that, right? It just depends on what your goals are. But the idea of the strategy is that we're going to take price and use price as a lever as far as optimization. All right, so the fourth one is for those of you who are here who are omni-channel retailers and have local stores. One of the things that's really interesting, we've seen this really interesting over the last several months with the pandemic, is that looking at conversion rates by location and really seeing how those are different. And so looking at strategies around, do we bid differently near our store, right? Because we know that a portion of people are going to come into the store. And so using that local data as part of how we think about local inventory ads, but also just how we think about just, Google shopping in general, right? If we know that we have a store within a given radius, 5 miles from a store, we may choose to bid higher in that area, knowing that maybe the ROI doesn't look as good, but actually a lot of those people, it is driving traffic into that store, right? So I think sometimes, companies get into silos and they're not really thinking about the full picture. But I think if you are an omni-channel retailer, it's important to think about what your store footprint looks like. Of course, if your stores are open, that's an important element of this too right now. But looking at that and then using that as a lever as well when you think about bidding. And again, we've seen some really interesting dynamics here over the last several months with, in areas of the country where stores were closed, we've seen online conversion rates really go up, right? Because if you think about the consumer behavior, the consumer is doing a search and they realize, this product's not available at any of the stores that I usually shop at, so I'm more likely to buy it online. So we've definitely seen the conversion rates really fluctuate quite a bit depending on where stores are open versus where they're closed. So that's another important signal if you're running Google shopping campaigns and you have local stores, really looking at, and even if you don't, I think even just so the online conversion rates have varied as well. Taking that into account when you're making bidding decisions and automation decisions, because if the return is much better, you want to make sure you're putting more of your dollars in those areas compared to maybe areas where the return's not as good. So I just talked about that already. So it's basically just taking the online data plus the offline data and sort of trying to get the full picture of your overall sales footprint. Okay. So the fifth one is around Google Shopping Actions, and so the buy on Google aspect that I talked about. So low price items, like in this case, this is a floor mat that's $10, right? These are very difficult to advertise profitably, right? And I'll show you why. And so the idea here is to leverage Google Shopping Actions to sell these items and improve your cost per acquisition. Right, so if you think about a product like this, you just do the math on it. Let's say you got 100 clicks, and let's say your conversion rate was 5%, which would be pretty good. But at $10, you made $50 in revenue. Well, let's say you're only paying 25 cents a click. It's still $25 in cost, and so your ROAS is a 2. You have a $5 CPA. And that's pretty tough. Like, you got to have some really good margins to be able to pay 50 cents on every dollar to Google and still make money, right? So when you get into really low price items, sort of less than $20, $25, that's pretty difficult to do. Well, this is a really good use for buy on Google, right? In the Shopping Actions program. So, in this case, let's say I sell, 5 of these for $50. Previously, there was a commission that went with these. But Google announced last week that the Buy on Google program is there's a new pilot, new beta that's going to make essentially the commission free. And so, you have to pay payment processing fees, but, for sake of this argument, you're going to get your marketing cost down to 0, which if your marketing cost is 0, that's a pretty nice infinite ROI on that. So when you think about low priced items, especially if you maybe have an established Google Shopping program, and a lot of cases maybe you just stop bidding on those because it just didn't make sense to advertise them. I definitely would recommend looking at Buy on Google as an option, as an outlet for some of those products that are relatively inexpensive. Okay, and then number 6 strategy, just as a bonus. Again, everybody likes things that are free. Make sure you're taking advantage of the organic listings in Google Shopping. So again, and it's really a testament to how quickly these programs change. Google announced back in mid-April that a portion of the real estate on the Google Shopping tab would be free listings, right? So essentially organic, you could think of it that way. And so if you look at this screenshot here, right, on the Shopping tab, in this example, the top row here is all sponsored ads, and then the bottom row and so on is free listings. It's not always like that. Sometimes you'll see the whole page is organic and free. Sometimes you'll see that there's very little organic, if any, on this page. But in general, across our clients, we've seen, for most cases, anywhere from about a 2 to an 8% increase in clicks coming from this organic traffic. Now you may say, well, 2%, 5%, it's not that much big of a deal. But look, if you're spending a lot of money on Google advertising and you get 5% more clicks for free, that's pretty good, right? So make sure you're taking advantage of this. It's super easy to do. You want to make sure that you're getting that free traffic again. Maybe it's only a few, 100 or 1,000 clicks a day, but again, free is free. All right, so just some key takeaways, and I'll hand it back to Tim to talk through some additional items. I think so. At first, it's just when you think about Google, think about your holistic Google strategy, right? So it should include text ads, it should include PLAs, like we're talking about here, YouTube, right, as well as buy on Google. So, in the past, I've heard of advertisers say, well, my traffic to my website's down because I'm selling more through the buy on Google marketplace. And I'm like, well, you have to look at that all together as one whole thing, right? And look at what your growth is overall. Second is that around, I touched on just briefly content optimization. Really the basics of content optimization is how do you transform an individual product? How do I add relevant keywords and brand and other information to an individual SKU? The more advanced strategies, a lot of the stuff I talked about here is really becomes possible by adding data elements to be able to segment your catalog, right? So high margin, low margin, high quantity, low quantity, any of those other different, is it a new product? Is it clearance? Different price points, things like that. And that's where really, you can take advantage of some of the capabilities of a data transformation platform to add some of that elements into your catalog to bid on separately. Number three, certainly enhance, there's a lot of smart bidding options that are out there from Google. Again, a lot of those are super easy, right? Give it a goal, boom, there it goes. I do think that's a good place to start. But we definitely see value in adding in more signals, like I talked about. Margin, could be price point, that are specific to your business to really get the most out of those. Fourth, we didn't talk much about it, but make sure you're giving Google frequent updates to your catalog, right? I mean, you can't have stale data out there. So there's something called the Content API that we plug into, and you want to make sure you're just getting frequent updates to your catalog. And then lastly is just the more data that you can have at your disposal is the more signals that you can build into your program. And the more signals really allows you to better optimize things. And ultimately, at the end of the day, any kind of digital advertising program like this, it's all about for a given, for a set of dollars that you put out there, how do you generate the most ROI on that? And that's certainly what we do, for our clients. And that's what I think, all of us should be thinking about doing is how do you take that data and drive better strategies from it? So just to wrap up, if you're not sure, if you're interested in any of this, if you're not sure if maybe your campaign, your program needs a tune-up, or you just want sort of another set of eyes on it, you can go to channelvisor.com/advertising-analysis. We'd be happy to start a conversation with you and take a look, and we'll send that email out in the follow-up to this presentation as well. So with that, let me go ahead and hand it back over to you, Tim.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Link. Really appreciated that. That was awesome. A lot of great content. Awesome. So just to wrap this up, I wanted to really briefly just touch on what Deliver can do to help our merchants increase their sales on Google Shopping. So, with merchants who have products with Deliver, the first thing that you will get is national 2-day coverage. So we can offer 2-day delivery anywhere in the country. In about 40% of the country, we can also offer free next day or 1-day delivery. The kind of kicker on this is that it is also at the same price. So let's say in this hypothetical scenario here, and this product would be like 8 inches by 2 by 2 and about 1/4 pound. For 2-day delivery, we're looking at about $6.95. That means that if someone is within a zip code that places them within next day, the fulfillment to you, the merchant, would still be $6.95, even though we have that conversion tag for free 1 day. And that's the service that they're going to receive. So the way it works is that the badges that are being displayed and being pushed from Deliver are going to dynamically and automatically update based on where your consumer is actually located at time of purchase. And so in terms of what this Google, free and fast for people that have started implementing it on their tags, on average, they saw an increase of 9% in conversion. And so, essentially the idea here is that this is Google's version of the Prime tag. And we all know the Prime tag works. And the way that they're powering this Prime-like shipping is with direct-to-consumer services like Deliver. All right, so in terms of how the actual flow will happen, there are 2 different ways in which you can start capturing these consumers. If it is going to be through a PLA or a product listing ad, when the consumer clicks on it and on that tag, it's going to drive the consumer back to your Shopify or your personal store. If they actually go up to Google Shopping and click on that and follow that path, it will actually prompt them to do buy on Google. So that is buying from as Link was talking about, the buy on Google and the shopping actions that they're now offering. So to sort of wrap it up here, I think that it's really important for all merchants to make sure that they're diversifying channels. And that's just a good acquisition strategy for any online brands, and Deliver can help you offer free and fast delivery across all of these channels. But, I do believe that Google Shopping should be the top of every e-commerce business's marketplaces to start building. Google is just too ubiquitous to avoid at this point. And the real icing on the cake here, as I think Link had discussed, and there's you can also follow these articles, Buy on Google is a marketplace that is now commission free. And so that is, it's already very highly trafficked, it's emerging. But right now, I think it's a really great opportunity to maximize your margins by utilizing this platform right now with Buy on Google being no commission. Cool. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining. We will be sending over an email just to kind of recap it, give links to more information about both Channel Advisor and Deliver, as well as recording from this call too. Link, I think we might stick on here for a little bit in case anyone has any questions.
Sure, happy to.
Cool.
Yeah, and I just want to echo something you said, Tim, just while the questions are coming in. You're totally right. Like, I mean, I've been in e-commerce for a long time now, and I think the diversification of channels for your business is such a key thing. And I think we especially saw this, really where we saw this is specifically as the pandemic kicked in, the shutdown back in March. We saw a number of merchants that we work with that were fairly well diversified. And, when one channel or one delivery network, had impact, they had something else to sell on, right? And so, some of those sellers who maybe they sold on Amazon, but they also sold on eBay and Walmart, Amazon had some bumps with delivery and pushing Prime out 4 weeks. And in a lot of cases, they were able to either fulfill themselves or, capture that sale on another channel, right? Like an eBay or a Walmart. So I think building that diversification into your business is the kind of thing that it doesn't seem important until you really need it. Yeah. And it's too late. So it's a really important part of I think any online seller's strategy.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely, I always think about it, there's just different consumers in different places, and where I buy some products is not where I buy others. So, always trying to capture people wherever they're at.
Exactly.
We do also have a couple of questions here that have been coming in. So one of them is, when a customer buys something from Google Marketplace, where is it fulfilled from? So I appreciate you asking this. The answer here is that it can be fulfilled by Deliver. Also, if you use, a channel listing tool like Channel Advisor, that would help you hook up to different distribution centers. So the answer there is that we will have an integration and we could help fulfill those orders. Anything you want to add there?
No, that's exactly, that sounds good.
Cool. What about, so here's another question. What automation tools do you suggest? Sounds kind of like one for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think certainly, so it depends a lot on the scale that you're at, right? So if you're, a reasonably small advertiser spending, $5,000 a month, I'm going to be primarily leveraging the automation tools that come with Google. As you start to get into much higher levels, right, you may want to look at other platforms that are out there. Certainly that's where a Channel Advisor can come in and help, as well as others that are out there. So a lot of it just really depends on what scale that you're at. I think there's two really parts of automation. I should have been more specific. There's sort of the bidding, which is what I was just talking about. There's also sort of the data automation, right? And really making sure that you're getting the best, freshest data to Google on a regular basis. And so, in that case, I mean, certainly we can help with that. A lot of others can help with that as well. But getting, you want to have something where your data is being transformed in an automated way, where you don't have to think about that every day. You shouldn't be uploading spreadsheets or things like that.
All right, you ready for another one?
Sure.
All right, this one's definitely at you. So what is a recommended strategy to tangibly measure digital marketing efforts for brick and mortar store sales and activity? How do you know that a digital ad brought a customer into a store?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So on this one, I would say so if we're sticking to Google for right now, in our experience, what we've seen is that the metrics and the capabilities of tracking have gotten significantly better over the last couple of years. So 2-3 years ago, it was pretty spotty, right? You could get reports through partners of Google, but they were like a month old and, matching up data, and it wasn't really very real time, and the accuracy was pretty questionable. Now, it's as easy in a lot of cases as it's a column that you can add into your Google Ads account, right? Of sort of store visits and even store sales in some cases. Google's got a lot of ways to track that, right? I mean, Google sort of, they're in your pocket, they're in your purse, right? They know where you are, they know where you're going. They're trying to connect the dots on that stuff. And I think by and large, most of the omni-channel retailers we work with feel pretty good, at least directionally, about using that data to make decisions. And of course, you can test it and validate it of, all right, if we increase spend in this market, do we see an increase in foot traffic to that store?
Got it. Makes sense, but I think the answer is also a little scary about how much
it is, and there's definitely amount of trust that has to go into that, right?
Yeah.
That you sort of have to trust Google that they're tracking it appropriately.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you ready for another one?
Sure.
So currently I'm using max conversion for smart shopping, but notice that Google is not spending the max budget. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say without getting a few more details, but certainly, so one of the things, if they're not spending the amount, I mean, one of the things to look at is, can you adjust the goal, right? And if that's not the case, then you may try switching off of max conversion to one of the other automation goals that they have, right? Whether that's, a target ROAS or something like that, because. And then finally, you may want to look at, what I would also recommend looking at is, what is your impression share? So if hypothetically you're getting 90% impression share, it may mean that there's just not demand in terms of search volume for those products, right? That's probably unlikely, but those are a couple things to check.
Cool. And then can you help us clarify the difference between Google Shopping Actions and Buy on Google?
It's crystal clear, isn't it? So the way, and I'm kidding, it's a very good question. I give Google a hard time about this because it is confusing. So Buy on Google is really the consumer-facing language that they're using, right? And that's changed over the last year and a half, right? But I think where it's at right now is Buy on Google. Shopping Actions is really, think of Shopping Actions as really the back-end platform that's enabling all that, right? So Shopping Actions is a combination of your data in Google, the payment mechanisms, shipping setup, all of that stuff that's really designed to enable, it sort of enables Buy on Google, right? Across any different surface, whether that's on, Google Shopping or on YouTube or wherever.
Cool. Awesome. So basically it's like Google Shopping Actions backend that the merchant works in, and then Buy on Google. That's consumer facing. Exactly.
Shopping Actions is something you'll never see be consumer facing, because I think they've really settled on the language of Buy on Google. And now, I mean, to that point, I mean, I think they've got work to do to educate consumers about what does Buy on Google really mean, right? Which I know they're working on.
Yeah, for sure. All right, another interesting one. So when advertising on Google, can competition on branded items play a role in what to advertise on? And if yes, what's a realistic way to measure when and how much to advertise when dealing with lots of diverse items?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It definitely can, right? So I think, and it's hard to know without sort of the specifics of sort of what the brand dynamics are here. But let's just say, going back to apparel, let's say I'm selling apparel and some of it's branded, some of it's Tommy Hilfiger or Polo or something else, and some of it's not. So yeah, it definitely can play a role, right? Because you need to look at what the competition is and what the search terms are, right? Are people searching for specific brands? Or are people just searching for generic, search items, right? Are they searching for, Tommy Hilfiger, blue long sleeve polo, or are they just searching for polo shirt? And so, in a lot of cases, we would segment based on queries to then see, are there meaningful differences in performance across those? So again, it goes back to, if you have a lot of diverse items in your catalog, thinking about sort of where are the levers that really make a difference in terms of the ROI, right? So maybe it's brand or non-brand, and doing some tests, right? And segmenting things and segmenting products in one group and another, bidding differently on those and seeing what drives a higher return.
Got it. And then just one other thing I wanted to clarify, that are there any like minimum qualifications for smart shopping, or will all like even new e-commerce merchants be eligible for it?
Yeah, I don't believe there's any limitation for smart shopping. So yeah, I'm 99% sure that's open to everybody.
Cool. Awesome. I'm seeing if we have any more questions that are coming through here. But no, looks like we're good for now. So really appreciate
Awesome.
it. I think that was some awesome, great information. I feel like I definitely learned a few things from you here.
Cool.
Just enjoyed it and hope you have a good rest of the day. And to everyone here on the call, appreciate you guys, dialing in, and we will be following up with just more information and recording from this call too.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.